guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, my name's Tori. So I've been thinking about this for a while. I've spoken about it on my other socials, but I want to start some sort of like sit down podcast style video for you guys. A lot of people tell me that they watch my reptile content while doing reptile chores or animal chores in general, and they like to listen to it in the background, and I know I do. Like, I listen to so many reptile podcasts, or the ones that do exist, while doing my chores, so I have it on in the background. And I've been thinking about it for ages. I've been thinking about it since I featured myself on a podcast, which was over on one of my friends' Riddler Reptiles channel. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it down below. Honestly, I really just enjoy talking to, I guess right now, myself but in general, just other people who are also interested in the hobby. I do enjoy filming vlogs, but I don't feel like I get to talk to you guys as much about, you know, my thoughts, feelings, opinions, recent topics. I feel like it'll be quite easy for me to kind of like once a week sit down and film one of these type of podcasts. And also, if there are people who would like to come on the podcast, and I definitely have some ideas of people I would love to have on, I thought that would be really fun too. I mean, I don't really have any interviewing experience, but I would love to get some people on and we can talk reptiles, and you guys can tune in. Let me know if there's anything you want to hear. Anyway, I thought it'll be fun to just start off with a little episode of just me talking about how I kind of got into reptiles, where I'm at now, what I want in the future, just my reptile keeping journey. Obviously, if there is someone you would like to see on the podcast, or if there is a topic you'd like for me to discuss, please leave me a comment and let me know. But anyway, I think let's just get into it. I need like a mic on a boom, you know? That will finish this. That's the next purchase. So for me personally, before reptiles, I have kept animals pretty much my entire life. My mum, who I lived with growing up, is very, very into animals herself. I remember as a kid, you know, we had them all. We had gerbils, we had hamsters, we had fish. I even remember at one point we did a lot of rescuing and a lot of, you know, local community help. At one point we took in 4 kittens, and I had 4 kittens in my bedroom. We also rescued 2 dogs that we rehomed. We had our own dogs growing up. I had 2 King Charles Spaniels. I even have a brief memory of us temporarily looking after somebody's snakes. I remember it was 2 ball pythons in 1 enclosure. Again, this was like 20 years ago. I was, you know, 6, 7, and my mum didn't know any better. But we've had our fair share of animals, but never really reptiles. I think because I was going off of what my mum was interested in, and my mum was interested, or thought, you know, the thing you get children more is rodents, right? And I didn't really have any interest in anything else. Also, where I'm based in the UK, and my local pet stores, they never had any reptiles in, so I didn't really know that they even existed, nor that I could keep them as pets. And honestly, it stayed like that until I was pretty much like 18. I never really had any interest, nor had been exposed to them, and kind of why I've always been into David Attenborough, you know, always watched his Natural Geographic, but never really understood that you could keep some of these as pets. I think I would have loved having a leopard gecko growing up, although I will say that they probably wouldn't have been cared for 100%. I mean, I look back on how I kept some of the like hamsters, and like I definitely wouldn't keep them like that now. But again, this was all 20 years ago. A lot of information has come out since then, and I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat with animals they had growing up and the level of care not 100% to what we'd expect now, or like the standard we keep them at now, right? I also had a pair of rats when I was about 13, 14. I had them both for 3 years. They were called Edward and Jacob, and I had them, and they were like my soul rats. I really did take care of them. They were kind of my first like my responsibility animal. Obviously my mum helped me out in terms of the vet bills and covered the costs, which is always really important for children and children getting into any animal hobby. So she was there for that aspect, but I remember really learning what a responsibility of owning a pet looked like when I had those rats. Then unfortunately one of them did go on to pass away. If you didn't know, rats are social creatures and you can't really keep them on their own, so I actually decided to get 2 more. And I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was going to be getting new rats, and that I didn't really want to get them from Pets at Home again, because they did have a lot of health issues, and again, that's a whole topic for another day, would be animals from pet stores, but I did get all of my animals pretty much from pets at home and did have a lot of issues. My rats were in for injections a lot of the time, and they had lots of respiratory infections and genuinely were pretty unhealthy, although they did live a long time. And I wouldn't personally now go and buy any animal from pets at home. But anyway, I remember mentioning this to my friend and saying that I wasn't really, you know, after doing more research and being more of the like 14, 15 kind of age bracket, wanting to find them somewhere else. She actually mentioned that she might be able to ask her dad for some of his, and I didn't really understand. Again, about 14, and she mentioned to her dad, and her dad invited me over to come and take a couple of his rats. Now, you can probably see where this is going, but I didn't at the time. Anyway, he took me over to his outbuilding where he clearly bred and kept a lot of snakes, and this was my first proper experience with seeing someone with a large amount of reptiles, and I hadn't seen anyone with a small amount at this point, so this was my first experience with ever seeing anyone who kept reptiles, and I didn't know any like different to that not being ethical or the right way to keep them. Anyway, he had a large amount of snakes, and with that was breeding rodents and was breeding rats. He actually let me take a couple of rats home, so essentially I kind of saved them from, well, being live fed. Again, I didn't really ask questions, but I very much doubt they will be euthanized ethically in that kind of setup. But I ended up taking 2 rats home, one of which ended up having only 3 feet because one of them had been chewed off by another rat in the enclosures that they were being kept in. His name was Stubby. Anyway, I kept those rats for another 2 or so years before eventually I was left with only 1, and did decide at that point that I didn't want to commit to the short lifespan of rodents anymore, and that I rehomed my last elderly rat to someone who had all old elderly rats for him to live out the last few months, because yeah, they don't live a very long time, and I wanted to put him in another social group. Now, for years after that, I was kind of in my teenage years, of which my priorities were kind of just going out. I knew that I've always loved animals throughout these years as well. I was really into horse riding. I had my own horse for several years. I've always been around animals, right, whether it was professionally or in education or just of the weekend and hobbies. I've always had a different animal hobby, and so when I left school, one of my friends actually went on to study animal care, which I probably should have done, but honestly at that point in my life I was very much like not wanting education, not wanting that kind of lifestyle. I was just going out. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I got a part-time job to fund me going out the weekends, was essentially what I did. Now, while I don't regret doing that because, you know, everything has led me to where I am today, I do kind of wish I went on and studied, and I've thought about veterinary medicine. It wasn't really for me, and also at that point I just wasn't in the headspace really at 17, 18 to like put my head down and go to college. So I studied really stupid things, like film and media. I mean, I've always been interested in media and filmmaking and content creation, hence me being here and filming this video and owning a camera and knowing how to use editing software. That wasn't what my heart wanted. Maybe professionally, you know, I have worked in social media in the past, but that wasn't where my heart was, and I've always wanted a dog. I've always wanted animals. I've always, you know, on and off had animals throughout the years. Then when I was 18, I actually took a year to go traveling. I went to Southeast Asia and spent a lot of time, again, finding myself always going to the animal attractions, right? So I spent a lot of time traveling and there was lots to do, but I would visit the elephant sanctuary or I would do the monkey experience. I didn't necessarily go herping, but I was interested in the wildlife and, you know, kind of almost found my calling while traveling, and just knew that no matter where I was, the one thing that I was always interested in was animals, right? So I decided while I was away to apply to go back to education and study animal care and behaviour, and I got in and I went, and it was amazing, and I wouldn't take back that experience for the world. I learned so much, and had my first ever hands-on experience with reptiles and working with reptiles. I worked in different professional environments for all types of animals, so I got exposed to reptiles through that, and I absolutely loved it. I was definitely scared. I think a lot of like snakes I was scared of at the time because I didn't understand their body language. I'd only ever been around mammals before that, and I didn't understand, you know, how to read a snake like I do now, or like the way that lizards move. I didn't really get it, but I did really enjoy it. I was really interested in it. Now, I completed my course. I did think about going on to study something further, but I did not in the end, and I do not regret doing that whatsoever, because I didn't have a career in animals that I knew that I wanted. And now I work with dogs. I'm a professional pet sitter, I dog walk, I do stuff like that. I look after people's animals while they're away, and I didn't need a expensive course to do that, and I'm glad that I set up my own business and that's the route that I took. Does that mean that maybe one day I won't go on to study something like veterinary medicine? I don't know. Anyway, after this was the pandemic. At the time I was living in a place that didn't allow pets. I didn't have any, and that really like bothered me. Like, I didn't have any animals and I wanted them. It was the first time in basically my entire life that I didn't have anything to look after. I've always loved feeling needed and wanted by something, and I definitely felt that from animals. I felt that, you know, I have to get up in the morning because I need to feed this or do this, or, you know, someone is depending on me, and I like that feeling, as well as just the love and appreciation you get from animals. And I didn't have that, and during the pandemic I pretty much made the decision I was going to move so that I could get a dog. My dog Jem, who we all know and love. I wanted to move so that I could get a dog, and that's exactly what I did. I moved back in 2020, and with this also decided to bring home my first reptile. How that happened, and it's a very weird story, I obviously got my dog and was obsessed, right? Loved her to pieces, still do. She's now 4, which is crazy to even think about. I loved that, and now the ability to not only have the funds but also the space and the time to look after another animal, I was like, I want something else. What can I have? Like, do I want rats again? Am I too old for a hamster now? Or like, I feel like everyone grows out of their pet hamster phase, and I didn't. Like, I've always fucking wanted a pet hamster, you know, like every little kid in school kind of had a pet hamster. I'm not over it. It's like when you have adult money but you haven't learned to be an adult yet. I was very much in that situation, and very much had the money and the space and the time, and unlike most other people, I hadn't learned to be like, no Tori, don't bring home that animal. Like, I can't ever imagine having kids one day and them asking for a pet and me saying no. Yeah, I don't know when that feeling comes. Anyway, I remember I was very much on the pet side of TikTok. This is when TikTok had just started. It was just a thing, and I remember it being Christmas and I got a little bit of money for Christmas, and I remember scrolling on TikTok, and this is the weirdest way for me to have got into reptiles, but you know, I didn't really have that urge when I left education at 19 to go and get a reptile, because I was busy and I was traveling and I was doing all these fun things that, you know, I wasn't able to be tied down to an animal. And not that I'd forgotten about reptiles, but I wanted the dog, right? Anyway, I remember scrolling through TikTok one day and seeing a viral video about moon like jellyfish, and I remember seeing it and thinking it was the coolest fucking thing ever, and I still do. I still to this day have never committed to it. I've thought about it, but for me it's a lot of maintenance for little reward. They look really, really sick. I will insert a picture for anyone watching this to have a look, but I remember seeing the TikTok and being like, that's it, I'm doing it. And there was a kit online that came with everything you needed for this full like LED jellyfish tank, and I remember talking to people about it and people being like, but why? Like, I know it looks cool, but like what reward do you get out of that? And not to say that you should always be looking for a reward when it comes to looking after animals, absolutely not, but why? And I couldn't answer that question. I feel like if you can't answer that question, you need to, like, you know, hesitate, don't impulse buy. Yeah, it just became very real to me how much of a cleaning constant it was gonna be, how difficult like the aquatic industry is in general, and like how I was going to get that right. And there were a lot of questions going around my head when it kind of almost like a light switch moment. I thought about back to college and how much I enjoyed that, and like what other species of animals I could get into. And I started my TikTok research. I started going through Reptile Talk, looking at what other people had. Within like a couple of days, got myself down to the local reptile store. And when I say local, it was about 45 minutes away because it was like the day after Boxing Day and most stores were closed, obviously. And I wanted it that day, apparently. And I didn't want to go to my local store, I wanted to go to the one that was open. And I really wanted a leopard gecko. I'd done my research, I'd had a look at like all the beginner kind of species, and I say beginner and we could have a whole podcast about that, but I looked at, you know, what I could afford and what space I had, and I came up with wanting a leopard gecko. Luckily for me, I had done enough research that I had a bit of a leg to stand on when I went to this pet store, in terms of knowing what I wanted, and I'll get to that. But I had done a fair bit of research over like a couple of days, and something about my personality, once I decide on something, I'm pretty like set on it, and I want to do it right, and I want to do it the best I can. And you know, that definitely has some negatives in my life, but for the most part it means that I do things properly and I like to do things really well. So I was researching this leopard gecko and finding out information. So I'd done my research on them, I knew they couldn't be cohabbed. I'd seen some mixed opinions on substrate. I wasn't 100% there with my research, of course, and my first enclosure definitely shows that, but I had some knowledge. And I say this because I went into this store and I've been back since, and I don't really have any bad, like nothing bad to say about the store, but I will say that I went in pretty much set on what I wanted and got confused very quickly. I went in, I spoke to a guy who was then recommending crested geckos to me, and I thought, you know, why are they that much easier? And I think it was just his personal preference, and that's why I always say to people, you know, beginner geckos, leopard geckos and crested geckos are brilliant, but go off your personal preference. And for me at that point, a leopard gecko was mine, so I was very confused why he was recommending crested geckos. I hadn't done any research on crested geckos. Skip to now and I have 20 of them. But at the time I didn't really know. And I remember him saying to me, like, you know, check out these, they're really cool. Telling me that he had one massive tank with like 4 or 5 of them in. And me getting kind of like swept up in it, and kind of like, if an authoritative figure in a pet store is telling you something, then you're gonna believe it, right? Like, he knows more than I know. And that would be cool to have loads of crested geckos in a big tank. Like, maybe that is what I want. Like, I don't know. Luckily, I'm pretty good at like sticking to my guns. No, I came here for a leopard gecko. That's what I've done my research on, that is what I'm gonna get, and asked to see what leopard geckos they have. For reference, I literally just got a standard like Dobby, who I still have obviously, but he's like a Max Snow, I think, which is like the most basic morph ever. They had quite a few different ones. I just loved the dark colour one. This, again, I knew nothing about morphs, right? I just went for the one that I liked the look of at the time. And I remember him telling me I could get both, because I couldn't decide between a yellow one and a dark one, being Dobby. Couldn't decide, and I remember them telling me that I could have both. Now, upon reflection, this was them trying to sell both of these geckos, and I do get it in terms of a business point of view. However, from me being a confused first-time reptile owner, I was like, but all the research I did I can't have 2, and now you're telling me I can get 2, and I would love to, because I'm excited and I want more. And they're only like £30, and I'm buying the setup, and you know, you're being told you can get 2, but I in my head started asking questions. I said to them, well, what? I thought you couldn't have 2, and they said, well, you know, some males, if you end up with 2 males, they might fight and you'd have to bring one back. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to get attached to like 2 geckos and have to hand one back. And he said, oh, well, if it's a male and a female, then obviously they'll breed. And I said, well, I don't want that either. And they were like, oh, but 2 females would be okay. But they were too young to sex. I kind of just said, right, well, if I'm listening to those stats, there is a 2/3 chance that that's not going to end well. You know, the only possibility is if these are both females, that will go well for me from what you're telling me. And so I made the decision to just leave with Dobby. Now, the setup I left with was one of those like top opening, like perfect quarantine enclosure. I've since thrown it away, but perfect quarantine enclosure, nowhere near big enough. You know, I was told that it would be fine for life. It definitely wouldn't be. Did like a half tile, half substrate, like 1 hide. I did have UVB and I did have a heat mat. Obviously now everyone has UVB and halogen overhead heating. It was better than I've seen. It wasn't great, and obviously it's much better now, but it was like, upon reflection, we've come miles, but I've seen worse from people. And it didn't take me long to realise that, you know, the more research I did, the more I kind of watched his behaviour and what he was doing and how much he liked to explore and all these things. I think within like 3-4 months I'd purchased my first Exoterra, which again was a medium low, which I thought was going to be his forever home and I thought was going to be fine. And was still not big enough. He's in a large low now, which is a 36, 18, 18, and he loves and thrives in there. So I've upgraded him 3 times since having him. That doesn't include all the you know, changes I've made to his care and continue to make, but that was that kind of experience. And honestly though, I loved it. The research, the community that came with it, like joining these Facebook groups, talking to people, getting inspiration, like waiting for payday and figuring out like what I could work on next. Like, I loved it. I still love it to this day, clearly. I had a great effing time. And I think it was only a couple months later, so about 3 months, 4 months later, when I upgraded him from the medium to the large, that I started the cycle of having a spare vivarium and wanting something else. So very soon after getting Dobby, I got Astro, who is my bearded dragon. I never thought I'd want a bearded dragon until I went to that reptile store the day I got Dobby, and they were telling me about bearded dragons, but telling me how much space they needed. And at this time, I wasn't really dedicated enough to the hobby to give up that much space. As you can see behind me now, I literally have 3/4 of my room designated to my animals. But at that point, I wasn't really entirely open to giving them that much space. So I went for Dobby. Still love Dobby. He'll always be my soul gecko and the reason I got into the hobby. But bringing home Astro was a very different experience. A reason I kind of don't recommend bearded dragons for beginners is just how high maintenance she was. I did spend a fair amount of money on her. She was my first understanding of morphs. When I was looking at getting a bearded dragon, I kind of didn't have the best experience at the reptile store, so I decided I wanted to buy one either from a breeder or preempt buying one, and discovered Hypo Zero bearded dragons and discovered morphs and discovered that you can get different colours and cool like shades and all this, and I just loved the all white bearded dragon, and I have continued that on because I obviously have my all white snake, but I was obsessed with the all white dragon. Found a breeder who is local to me, had a really good reputation, and bought her. Now, she took a lot of work and she had to be fed 3 times a day. I had to understand the UVB outputs and the overhead heating, and there was a lot more from the beginning that I had to get right. There was a lot more I didn't understand. There was a lot more attention I had to give her. She was glass surfing. I didn't understand why. It was just overall a lot more of a stressful experience, and a lot more like I felt like I wasn't doing the right thing. And, you know, we came out of it, and Astro's coming on to what, like 3, 4 now, and love her to pieces. Wouldn't sell her for anything. She's my child, but I remember the time being like very like, oh okay, shit, this is like difficult. Don't get me wrong, I have much more difficult reptiles now and have had, but at the time that was my first like, oh okay, like I need to feed this dragon like 2-3 times a day. Everyone has a few like different opinions on that. Everyone's telling me different amounts. Like, started learning about bioactivity. Was that, am I not doing things right? Like, that was when, and that's when I had the 4x2x2. Like, there was a lot more to it, and after that I didn't get anything else. I didn't get anything else for a couple of years, and I just lived with me, my dog, and my 2 reptiles, and it was like that for a while, and I was happy there. You know, I got to the point I was really happy with all my enclosures, well, both of my enclosures. It was fun. It was fun. It's obviously still is fun. It always has been fun, but it was good to, until Astro was an adult, about a year and a half, I didn't want anything else. Like, she was a lot of work. You know, I had a couple scares with her. I ended up in the vet a couple of times. There was one time on my birthday, in a birthday outfit, I had to go to the vets with her because I thought she was egg bound. Just imagine me in like a cocktail dress in the vet's office. Like, that was a great day. And then about 2 years ago, I started to venture out again and find new things I wanted to keep, and wanted a crested gecko. Picked up a crested gecko and went straight in with doing a full bioactive enclosure, and that was fun. Like, that was my first tropical species, my first attempt at a bioactive, another new experience for me. And I think having that new experience really reopened this thing of like wanting different species and wanting to learn about different species, but not only learn but to own and to experience. And I got another crested gecko, and I really enjoyed setting up those bioactive enclosures. And like, that is when I decided to start my TikTok, because I was looking on TikTok for inspiration for my bioactive enclosures. This will be a really good way of me almost keeping a diary of my progression in the hobby. And you know, I want to film a video of my first ever bioactive enclosure, which is still up, my first ever bioactive enclosure, and I want to be able to look back and go, oh wow, like I've come all this way. And that's exactly what I do, and I'm so glad I did that. Sometimes I question still having some of my old content up, because in the past year I've improved so much. You know, I've only been on TikTok a year and on YouTube for like months, but sometimes I question my old TikToks and just like whether I still want them up. But then I have so much more updated information that people can, you know, look at and find. But I got caught up in the feeling of, you know, new species of animals. I, during this time, also rescued a snake, which is a whole separate story, but essentially I got a rescue snake who was really mistreated and ended up being very, very aggressive. He was a king snake who I actually had to then rehome again, because I wasn't in a fit state to care and provide for him properly. I didn't know enough about snakes and their body language to deal with that situation at all. So I put a pause on the snakes. But I brought home some other cool things. I got white tree frogs about a year ago. I should say that snake as well was probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. So that was slightly before all of this, and before my TikTok era. But yeah, I got a blue tongue skink. I filmed that, put together videos for that, did a full bioactive build, and I just really enjoyed making the content. It's not to say that I get the new animals, and this is something I've had in comments before, that I get the new animals for the content. I'm getting the new animal for me, and because I enjoy the hobby and because I love looking after and rescuing animals, but filming content is just a bonus and what I like to do. And then yeah, about a year ago I started my TikTok journey and started showing people things that I'd learn, and you know, things that I've learnt since then, showing off my enclosures, giving inspiration, learning new things as well, and building a great community. I have an amazing community of friends. I have a Discord server with 100 people where we talk all things reptiles. Like, it's been a crazy year. It's the end of 2023, coming up to 2024. I have lots of big plans. So much has happened. I'm now officially a partner with Arcadia, who is one of my favourite reptile lighting brands. No, the best reptile lighting brand there is, and I've had a partnership with them for the past 2 months, which is just fucking crazy to even say or think about. And I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, I haven't brought home a new animal for a while. You know, in the past year I've got into snakes. As I mentioned, I had that bad experience, but I now, ball pythons are like up there with my favourite species to keep ever, so that's like a full circle moment. I absolutely love educating and helping where I can, and beating this stigma around reptiles being big and scary and, you know, all that negativity. I've had friends come over and handle my animals who have never handled reptiles before and leave like wanting a royal python or wanting a crested gecko, and it's just an amazing feeling. I love posting videos, I love making content now. I'm definitely focusing on that more moving into 2024, and I cannot wait to show you some of the things I'm working on. Maybe this podcast as well, maybe I'll add that to my 2024 list of projects. I'm still loving and really enjoying the upgrading process and redecorating my enclosures and just really striving to give my animals the best care possible. Like, over Christmas I have an emerald tree skink project which I've had planned for months, which I'm so excited to like film a whole YouTube video on, and I will be sharing that whole process. Obviously it hasn't just been a completely like amazing journey. Like, I've had hate online, I've had things I've done wrong, I've had, you know, it's ups and downs. I've had not like burnt out, not wanting to film content. I've had it all. I've been through all of it, but I can really say that I'm at a point where I'm loving the hobby still. I'm in that perfect work-life hobby balance. I think at the moment that I'm, you know, getting out and doing what I want to do, still working, but also have enough time for my hobbies and hopefully some more time for content creation as well. And I'm now at a point that, yeah, I have well over 30 reptiles. It's not for everyone, I don't recommend it. A lot of them are crested geckos, which I did breed for a short period of time and will be going to new homes in the new year, and I will be back down to probably around 20-25 reptiles. Next year there's loads of upgrades because I got a lot of younger snakes who are all going to need really luxurious 4x2x2s in the new year, and I can't wait to like film that and share with you. So there'll definitely be some more vlogs coming, but I do really enjoy these like sit down talk videos, get to know me videos. I'd love to talk on some more maybe controversial topics. I'd love to talk to other keepers. Of course, if there's anyone you would like to see or I should reach out to, please do let me know, because I feel like that would be fun. I feel like I really enjoy it and wish there was more reptile podcasts for me to listen to. So if my voice doesn't annoy you that much, I don't always sound this nasally, I am a bit sick, but if my voice doesn't annoy you too much and you have any questions or anything you want to talk about, as I said, please do leave a comment. But that is where I'm at now. 2 dogs, 5 snakes, quails, ferrets, lots and lots of lizards, the list goes on. Everyone is loved. Lots and lots of isopods, you know. I can fill my whole fucking hour talking about fucking bioactivity because I've been through it all. But yeah, that's kind of my reptile journey up until now. I'm nowhere near done. There is plenty more to come. There is lots more I need to learn. There is lots more I want to share. But anyway, if that didn't bore you too much and you're still here, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I'll be back soon. I say that every time, but I mean it this time. I mean it this time. I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you enjoyed this one today. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.